Good evening, everybody, and welcome to today's STEM Talk, research-based strategies for boosting STEM interest in youth. My name is Adam Maltese, and I'm joining you from Bloomington, Indiana, in the middle of the US. This program is presented by the American Center in Moscow, which is supported by the US Embassy in Moscow. If you're watching on the American Center's YouTube or VK channels, please post your comments and questions in the live chat, and I'll try to deal with them as they come in, and I'm excited to be with you today. So again, we're going to talk about research-based strategies for boosting STEM interest in youth today. And I'm a professor at Indiana University in Bloomington, Indiana. So just a quick agenda. We'll do a little bit of introductions, and then we'll do a broad overview of interest and why it's important. We'll do approaches to help initiate interest in youth, approaches to help sustain interest, and then some STEM specific suggestions, and then see if you have any questions toward the end. So before I introduce myself more, I would really appreciate if you are out there listening and watching, if you wouldn't mind sharing in the chat where you're from, what you do for work, and what's the main reason you're watching this. That would be really helpful to know, and I will try to tailor the rest of the presentation based on that. So a bit more about me. I am a dad and a husband, and that actually impacts my research and my thinking a decent amount. Having two children in school, in what we consider middle school here, or grade 7, and in high school, seeing education through their eyes has really impacted me a lot, and even applying some of the ideas from our research related to STEM interest, or we also research failure, that has been quite impactful to see how this plays out in real time with them. I'm a researcher and a teacher, so I work at the School of Education at Indiana University, and I also help to prepare future science teachers. And so that's the main focus of my work. I have a background in geology and studying rocks and lava flows, and also working on environmental pollution. And so that is definitely, was my primary interest when I was younger, and definitely why I'm in science education and STEM education now. One of the things that I do is to direct the makerspace that we have in the School of Education. And makerspace is a place where you can get access to a variety of technologies, 3D printers and laser cutters, computing devices, and those sorts of things, and work to use those to solve problems, to create new things, and just to have some fun as well. And so I run that at the School of Education. We also run a maker van that I'll show you on the next page. And we use that to go out to schools and community organizations in our area, and to get more kids participating in these types of activities. And a lot of time we spend working on training teachers and other educators on how to do more of this type of activity with youth, trying to get them engaged, trying to get them to think more about STEM. I also love to learn new things and to travel. We just got back. This pictures of my family in Andorra. We just got back a few days ago from a trip to Europe. And through travel, I love learning new things about places and people. I have not been to Russia yet. I've been close, but not been there yet, but it's definitely high on my list of places that I'd love to go. And I love to learn new things. So not that I approach every opportunity with open arms as much as I would like to, but I do really like to try to learn new things about a wide range of topics. And that helps me think about the work that I do in the world in different ways. On the right side of this slide there's a map of the U.S. And Indiana is highlighted there in red. Pretty tiny state in the grand scheme of things, but out toward the center of the US. We're not too far from Chicago, if you might be familiar with that city. So this is just a quick slide of some of the organizations that have supported our work and some of the projects that we've done. We've really done a wide range of projects, thinking about how people get interested in STEM, ways we can interest them and get them engaged. And more recently, we've been focusing a little bit on problem solving and how we can get more youth to develop skills in problem solving. This is just a slide, a quick image of the makerspace that we run. It's a relatively small space, but has a lot of technologies and things inside. And then the Makermobile is the van that I was mentioning that goes out to communities around us. We're in a pretty rural area, so lots of farms around us. And the Makermobile goes out to educators in those communities to provide training to the educators and opportunities to the kids in those schools who might not have access to some of these technologies to help get them engaging with these things that, again, they might not regularly have access to. Okay, so I think it's important to always start with some sort of some level setting, getting everyone on the same page. So I know I use STEM as a term all the time, probably hundreds of times a day. And, but I don't want to assume that you and I have the exact same understanding of it. And even within the research community, I would say there's probably two main approaches for how people think about this. And I've reconciled in my mind that I can use it both ways. But just to be clear, sometimes on the left, you see, sometimes we use STEM as just what I would call an umbrella term, where we're just using it to talk about the fields of the various sciences, technology and computer science, and then a variety of the engineering fields, as broad as engineering is, and mathematics. So we're just using it sort of like we might use the arts, right? There's a variety of different types of arts fields, but we just say the arts as an easier way to talk about it. So that's one way to use it. A different way that it gets used is to really mean the integration of these fields. So not solely talking about a specific issue in biology, but realizing that in the modern era, and more science and all of these problems that we're talking about, COVID being a good example, they require individuals and groups of people to have a really wide array of knowledge that they bring to tackling the challenges that we face in the world. And so sometimes when we're talking about STEM, we're talking about the teaching of these sort of fields in an integrated way towards solving problems, or how we might prepare students to be more prepared to have an understanding of all of these areas to some degree to help address the things that they want to address in the world. So just to set the level there. And do feel free to please post questions or comments in the chat as we go along. That would be really helpful. And like I said, I'll try to address them along the way or toward the end of the conversation. Okay, so I've got another question, and I'll take some pause here after I ask it. But I'm wondering, before we get started, if you are willing to share, what would you do if you had 3 hours of free time? So if I magically could grant you a number of hours that you could really do anything you wanted with, except sleeping and eating, what would you do in that time? And if you don't mind sharing that in the chat, that would be great. Yeah, so there's some good ideas coming in. I would make sourdough bread too. That's a great one. I actually need to get back to it after I've been away. But the reason I ask this, there are so sorry. Some of the responses that came in are, engage in some yoga, do some cooking, read a book, uh, bake bread. Those ideas are sort of what I expected to come through. I can imagine people saying I would go for a walk. I might do some knitting or sewing. I might paint or play some music. I might go out dancing with friends. Those are all things that you would choose to do when given free time. And we commonly use the term, and I'm not sure if it's the same in Russia, but I imagine it is, that that these are things that you're interested in, right? And so that's sort of what that is what I'm going to be talking about primarily today, is when you are finding an interest in things, it's typically indicated by something that you would prefer to do when you have time, when you can make that choice. Right? No one said in here, I would love to go back to work and do the things that I didn't finish, although we often do that. Very few, no one said, I would love to, do cut the grass or go into the garden and pull weeds or do those things. Again, sometimes we like that, but often those are more of things that we need to do rather than prefer to do. Yeah, definitely going to a sports club or engaging in an English class, taking pictures, right? Those are all things that, again, we often want to do. And that's what we're going to be focusing on today. So why does interest matter? What's the value in getting someone interested in something or trying to support them if they're interested in it? So we know that from the research that generally when you're interested in something, and I would suggest that whatever idea that you just shared with me or that you had in your mind for this, that you would think about it, as an example as we go through some of these things and see if you agree with them or not. So when you're interested in something, you're more likely to spend available time that you have doing that thing. So if you really like to play tennis, and that is a high interest or a strong interest of yours, well, then when you have time that you can do things, you frequently might choose to play tennis. Not all the time, but you might do that. You're more likely to mentally focus on the things that interest you. So when you're engaged with them, it's not a passing engagement. It's, you're sort of cognitively engaged and thinking about what you're doing, thinking about what you're doing, how you might get better, strategy, a whole bunch of things. You're more likely to persist. And persist means to stay with it. So even when things get challenging, you're more likely to persist doing the things that interest you. So I'll go back and I'll probably use food examples a lot through the presentation because I love food and I think it has a lot of good examples we can use. There was the example of baking before. So baking is sort of easy to get started, but not very easy to perfect. And if you are not interested in baking or cooking, you could very quickly try it and then leave it because you burn something or you create something that doesn't taste good. So if you're not interested in those things, you would give up quickly. But if you are interested, then you're more likely to persist. So if something doesn't go right, in the moment, you might say, I'm never going to do that again. But if you're interested, you'll likely come back and try it again to try to do better the next time. And so that's the persistence. You will often have a higher level of cognitive and emotional engagement in the things that you find interesting. So it matters more to you. Again, you're sort of paying attention and you're focused, but also if you have developed a strong interest in things, then probably you have a higher level of emotional investment in that. So if it doesn't go well, or you do see success, then you're probably going to feel more emotions than in something that you don't care about at all. And then as a result of all these, and this is one of the reasons why it's really important from my perspective, and one of the things that I try to get across to the teachers that we work with, you're likely to learn more content and learn it more deeply because you're interested in the idea and in the content, and you're sort of putting forward more effort to try to understand the concepts, try to understand the ideas. So if we go to a sports example, and we'll go back to tennis, if somebody is trying to, if you're playing tennis with a friend because you're bored and you have nothing else to do, but you're not really interested in it, then if they try to give you some instruction in that, you might not really care. Whereas if you really engage in tennis and really like it a lot, and somebody is saying, oh, I think you can improve your serve, or I think you can improve this shot by doing, this thing, then you're more likely to sort of be focused and invested in that and try that or remember that as you go through. And so again, you're more likely to be sort of at a deeper cognitive level engaging with those topics. And most likely you're going to learn that more deeply. So one of the reasons why this matters is if you're an educator or educating anyone in something, is if you can get them to be interested in it, or if you can find how the topic that you're talking about or that you're thinking about connects to interests that they already have, then you're going to be much more successful in getting them to engage in these things. So just as an example, if you are a teacher and you're teaching a class of kids, and you know that most of those kids play sports or play a sport, then using that sport as an example that they're interested in to teach about mathematics or statistics or history or whatever it is, you're more likely to get them engaged because they're interested in the ideas that you're talking about and the substance around it. Okay, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but just to let you know that I talk about interest. I am not a psychologist, so I talk about interest in a very simple way and in a very general way. But there is research that helps to define interest and its development in more specific detail. And so one of the models that I like the most is called the 4-phase model of interest development. And generally it shows that there's a sort of progression. It's not on a time scale. It's not always guaranteed, but basically there's a progression from some initial interest development to more advanced interest, maintenance. And that's the way I'll talk about it in the rest of the presentation. So they start with saying that there's triggered situational interest, right? Which is someone needs to be engaged in an activity. They need to have the chance to engage in an activity for an interest to ever start. So kids aren't born with an interest in photography. Someone needs to give them the chance to take photos, to see photos, to think about photos in order to develop that interest. So that might be triggered situational. Maintained situational is, sort of a step beyond that, let's say. And what that means is often if we're talking for kids, they can't necessarily make the choice to engage in it themselves, but they have a preference. So, if something is put in front of them, they might choose to participate in this activity versus another activity because they've done it before and probably because they have a positive feeling toward it. But they're not able to go out of their way to sort of participate in that all the time. Then it advances to sort of individual interest. And this is where it's starting to get a bit more serious and a bit more, ingrained in how they engage. So there's what we would consider emerging individual interest. And this is that someone will try to find ways to seek out participating in that thing on their own. So if given free time, sort of like I asked you before, they are going out to practice basketball, or they put their skates on to go practice figure skating. They go into their room to play the guitar on their own without being told that they need to do that sort of thing. And then at sort of the most advanced level, there's what we call maintained individual interest. And that's really, if you think of somebody, and again, you all might do a number of these things yourself, they are regularly making the choice to participate in an activity, or to read about a topic, or to read in general. Even when things don't go well all the time, they still persist in doing that, right? They sort of keep coming back to it over and over again. And so that's just to sort of give you a sense that there are these types of sort of progressions through some of these phases of interest. Okay, so when I was originally asked to participate in this, one of the ideas was, can I present some information on how we can help people get interested in STEM, and how we can help maintain that. So that's what most of the rest of the presentation is about. So again, if we think about it as initiating or starting someone's interest in something, and again, particularly with youth, and then how we can maintain that, that's what I'll share about here. So I have underlined and bolded and in a bigger font and all those things, the word exposure. So when you are trying to initiate someone's interest, or when it is happening, regardless of your attempts, the main thing is exposure, meaning if they don't know that something exists, if they don't know that rock climbing is an activity that they can engage in, if they don't know that looking at birds, in a park is a thing that they can engage in, then there's no way that we can claim that they have interest or can develop interest in it. So if you think of this as sort of opening up opportunities, showing them opportunities, showing them different things that they might engage in, that's going to be probably the most important thing. Is if they don't know that it exists, again, they can't be interested. So thinking about breadth and depth, right? If you think of very young kids, there seems to be in the US, and I think it's in a lot of places, but I'm not 100% sure that it's everywhere. Many young kids are interested in dinosaurs. So that is great. But for many of them, they lose interest over time, right? They go on to something else, but they have sort of at least one time when they might be interested in learning about dinosaurs and animals. So to expose them to breadth, if let's say they see a dinosaur and they start becoming interested in it, and they seem to want to do more, right? Breadth would be that you could show them that there's other things like dinosaurs that they can engage in. Again, there's animals that are alive today. There's plants. There's different colors, right? There's different categories of things that they might engage in. Depth would be, well, rather than just knowing a Tyrannosaurus Rex, that you could show them that there's a variety of dinosaurs, and there's all these different time periods where, where different creatures lived beyond just the dinosaurs that they might be engaged in. Now, again, don't go too far and try to show them all the scientific classifications of every creature that's ever lived. They probably won't be interested in that. But if you think about breadth and depth, that will help this idea of exposing them beyond something that they already know. It's important that to get someone interested, often things need to be enjoyable and positive. So that might seem like something we can quickly just say, yes, that's fine. I can ignore that. But it really is important that somebody finds this as a pleasurable activity. Again, if you think about the list of things that you said to me before, some of those might be activities that you engage in because someone is telling you need to, or you're doing because solely for your health or something like that. But there's probably some amount of it that is enjoyable to you, gives you a positive feeling and makes you feel better in some way. It might be, again, if it's cooking, it might create a meal for you and your family, or it might taste good to you. So generally, we develop interest in things that we find enjoyable. It's important for you to remember that, particularly as an adult, what interests you may not interest everyone else. Oftentimes, when I'm working with scientists and engineers, they seem to think that right away, if they're very deeply interested in the cosmos and outer space, everyone else will be interested in the same thing for the same reasons. And that's not always the case. I think you can use your passion to get someone else interested sometimes in the things that you're interested in, right? Come on, let's go dance. I really enjoy it. And I'll help you see if you might enjoy it as well. But don't just assume that everyone's going to like it like you do. As well, and this often comes up in the US in terms of parents thinking about math and mathematics. If you don't like something, it's usually very clear to kids and to youth that you do not like something. And so it's hard to try to sort of fake it and convince them otherwise. So work at it. If you think it's important for your kids to try to find an interest in math or music, but you really don't like it, then find a way to try to change your opinion and change your experiences. Otherwise, they'll really get the sense that you're sort of forcing them to do it, and it's not, it's not authentic that you're interested in it. And then try to demonstrate value beyond just knowing something. Too often science is taught, and the idea is this is important just as a body of knowledge. It's a bunch of facts that you can repeat back, or you can act like you're an encyclopedia, or if there's a trivia game or something you can do well on. But often that's where it's left in school. And so when many kids are asked in research, what does it take to be good at science? They say knowing facts, right? And knowing things. And that's really not what it takes to be good at it. So that it gives a false sense of what the field is like. And that is misleading and often leads a lot of people to steer away from it because they think if I don't know all these facts, then I can't be good at this. So try to demonstrate that beyond knowing things is really valuable. Okay, so sometimes people think that it's possible to make someone interested in something. And so I include a couple images here that commonly parents seem to, at least in our area, and I think in many places I've been in the world, seem to want their kids to get engaged in. So it might be something like chess or practicing mathematics, and going to after school sessions on mathematics. There's definitely sports, things like ballet and figure skating and ice hockey and football or soccer that parents want their kids to be interested in. And so, and then music, of course. So oftentimes the way this manifests is parents having their kids, sort of saying, I want you to take violin lessons and signing them up and not really giving them an option to, whether or not they want to participate and continuing to have them participate, for months or years without really, asking if they are interested. There's plenty of that happens. And there surely are cases where that does lead to somebody developing an interest. But in most cases that I'm familiar with, when given a choice, the student stops and doesn't want to do it anymore because there wasn't this sort of inherent interest that they found. Now, using that example, if we go back to the idea of exposure, if a student has never tried taking a violin lesson or playing violin or piano or playing chess, then they can't know if they're interested in it. So I definitely would support the notion that if your kids are open to these ideas, have them try something, right? Just like with foods, they can't know if they like it or don't like it without giving it a taste, but don't force them to eat it if they don't like it. So maybe after a few games of chess or a few skating lessons, if they say, nope, I don't really like that, then it's probably best to back away. Otherwise, and I'll use this example later of sort of door open or door closed. If you force them to continue to do that, and they really develop a dislike for it over time, then once they're given the choice, they probably will never go back to do it again because they've had a bad interaction with it. Whereas if you are responsive to how they're feeling about it, and let's say you try them skating when they're 4 years old and they don't like it right away because they've fallen or they got cold or something like that. But maybe a couple years later, some of their friends are playing hockey and you say, okay, do you want to try it again? They might be at the stage then where they're more willing to try it for a few reasons, right? One is to spend more time with their friends. But if you have sort of ruined it for them earlier, again, they're going to be less likely to come back. So that's where I would say really try to be responsive to the youth and what they're thinking, but also sometimes you need to to set up an experience where they're getting the chance to engage, even if they don't initially really know what it is or whether they'll like it. And again, feel free to ask questions in the chat if you're agreeing, disagreeing, wondering anything about it. I'll come back to the questions later, but feel free to ask as we go too. So as I mentioned before, we often think of triggering interest or initiating interest. And that's what I was just talking about. And then this idea of maintaining interest. So you might have an experience where someone is, you need to expose them to playing violin in order for them to understand whether or not they might like that. But let's say that, yes, it's not the first thing that they would choose to do if given free time, but they also don't mind it. They seem to like it when given that chance. So what I'm going to talk about now are things that you can use to help maintain someone's interest once they've sort of moved past that initial stage. So, it probably makes sense, but the idea of continued exposure is important. So we go back to the dinosaur example. Moving past the idea of, oh, you're interested in a Tyrannosaurus Rex, great. We'll stay focused on that, and it'll only be about, the T-Rex forever. Instead, to try to maintain interest, you need to show them that there's a sort of a bigger, wider world out there, even if it's within that topic or that thing that they're interested in. So for the dinosaur example, again, you might help them to engage with going deeper about Tyrannosaurus Rex. So not just having a small toy dinosaur, but maybe there are some books that they can read about it, or they can read about the scientists who are discovering about dinosaurs, or watching a movie about them. And then for breadth, you could show them, again, things that are similar to dinosaurs, but maybe go beyond the dinosaurs and might focus more on a wider set of animals or those types of things, right? So really expanding their worldview, expanding the level of experiences that they have, so that it's not all about a single thing. I think too often we find something that kids are interested in a very specific way, and then we try to go out to an extreme. And when we do that, they don't see that there's sort of a wider context that these activities, these pursuits exist in. And seeing that, I think, can really help them. They might change their main area of interest, but I think it still helps a more healthy development of interests over time that sort of fit with them and their personality and their skill levels. It's also important if you can demonstrate possible value. And this one might be a little bit tricky because we often want to, as adults, we often say things are valuable just because they're valuable, right? We don't have a good reason for them. Or we might say, well, in 15 years, you might need this, and therefore it's valuable, right? You need to study math now as a 10-year-old, because when you're 30 years old, you're going to need that math to get by when you're shopping in a store or when you're doing something. And that's really hard for kids to see and appreciate that value in those very distant types of examples that we give. And so sometimes they'll trust us and they'll want to accept it and do it for that reason. But it's much better if you can find something in the near term closer to them that might be valuable. Right. And again, often just knowing more about physics, knowing more about biology, knowing more facts is not necessarily valuable in and of itself. So I would encourage you to try to help them think about where the knowledge that they're learning, the skills that they're developing, might be applicable in other ways, right? So applying that knowledge can help you to do various things. If you understand more about the human body, then you might be able to take care of your body in a better way. Or if if you hurt your arm or you're not feeling well, you might be able to understand what's going on there better. If you're an athlete or a musician or a dancer, you might be able to understand more about how your body moves in a certain way or why it can't move in a certain way. So trying to get them to go beyond just the, being able to name every bone in the body, but trying to think about, what bones do, why they're valuable, how we've learned about the body, but also other structures in the world and how we can compare animals through thinking about the bodies, body morphology and those types of things. Anyway, that helps to both do some of the increasing depth and breadth, but it also, they see sort of a value in why they're studying what they're studying, or why they're just, it's not even studying, why they're engaging, with the content. I have a play the long game on here. And what that generally means in my mind is sometimes we get hung up on the immediacy of someone's reaction to something. And so you have an experience. Let's say you have, your kid is interested in music, and you expose them to violin and or piano, and they seem to like it. And so then you say, okay, great. I'm going to try to do what Adam said, and I'm going to try to help maintain this interest. So I'm going to get them a recording, a digital recording, a CD, a record, whatever it is, of a famous violin performance. And you play that for your kid, and they don't seem to like it. Don't take that as, oh, we have to give up. It's over. They're never going to like violin anymore. We should turn and find something else for them to do. You keep thinking about different opportunities and different ways. And again, this goes back to this idea of depth and breadth, different ways that they can engage with these. And once you open the door and they seem to be wanting to go through that door, you don't have to sort of, force them in that direction or overwhelm them with a variety of opportunities. If they pick up a paintbrush one time and seem to show interest in painting or drawing, you don't have to say, okay, great, look, they're a natural. Let me enroll them in 30 different art and painting classes and go out and spend lots of money on materials for these things, that might overwhelm them, right, with the expectations. We often do this with really young kids. I remember doing this with my own kids sometimes of, they want to tap on something or make a noise like a drum, and people will start making comments like, oh, look, they're going to be a drummer or something like that. No, probably not. They're just enjoying exploring that and experiencing that today. And so again, don't overdo it, because sometimes that can actually have the wrong effect on people. So going along with that, to be interested in something and to maintain interest in something, it does not mean that you need to engage with it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 and a quarter days a year. That, there are some people who do that. In my experience, and in some of the research, often when somebody, this idea of overdoing it, if somebody engages in something and then very quickly sort of ramp up to them doing it all the time, often they do, they experience what we would call burnout, where they do so much of it that once they get to a certain level, they don't really want to do this anymore. I have had discussions with some of our students who are here. They're working with me as a graduate student in education. And, they come from different places in the world in terms of where they grew up. And what many of them will say is, in secondary school, we were engaged in so much science and math that, it was sort of too much. And then when they got a little bit older and they got the chance to make the choice for themselves, they were sort of burnt out. They didn't want to think about it anymore, right? They wanted to sort of focus on other things. And so I think often if we sort of try to maintain interest by doing too much of it, right, by being on 7 different hockey teams and spending every available minute playing hockey, then there's a greater chance that somebody will eventually lose interest in it, because it's just all that they do. I think it's important to have to maintain interest, to have them engage with others who have similar interests. So, in many of these examples, this happens naturally, but to have them talk with other kids or other adults who are interested in observing birds or collecting leaves or foraging for mushrooms or cooking or dancing, that allows them to feel connection about their interests, and to learn new things and get different perspectives on why those people are interested, and sort of what it does for them, how it helps them view the world. So I would definitely encourage, even beyond yourself, right? You might not always be the best connection to an interest in a topic, but finding others who they can talk with, engage with, realize that other kids are there like them that are interested in these things, that's really powerful, and realizing that they're part of a bigger community. Sometimes if the interest that they have is very, very advanced or very unique, then it might be important that through something like the internet, or watching videos online, that might be the easiest way for them to connect, because there might not be somebody in their immediate sphere of their family or their friends who have a similar interest. So of course, as an adult, you'd want to curate that and monitor that, but that might help to foster their interest, again, to realize that there are other people out there that look like them, and who have that interest. That can be helpful. And then the final thing on this slide is expect ups and downs. So it is not going to be that someone is interested in something all the time. It's not that a youth develops, as a hockey player, and from day one, they start winning and doing all the, skills that they want to develop, and skating faster than everyone. And it just, it never stops. That's not the way it works. So there are going to be what we call ups and downs. There's going to be challenges, and they might lose interest at some point. They might come home from a piano lesson or from a tennis practice or from school and say, I don't like this anymore, or I don't want to do it, or I hate this. That's okay. You want to probably investigate what happened, but it's okay that they don't want to engage, and it's not always positive all of the time. So your role is to help balance that out. Not to say, oh, don't worry about it, it's not important, but to say, okay, I understand. Maybe, we don't re-engage in that way anymore, or we come back to it in a few weeks, and that might change things. And again, they might leave it forever, but more than likely, if they've developed some amount of interest in it and some amount of skill, they'll probably come back to it at some point. And so not to worry about that too much. So just to put that into visuals, if you look at, if we have time on the bottom axis here, and on the y-axis or the vertical axis, we've got interest level, right? You might look at this graph and say, oh, okay, well, interest went up. It hit a peak or a maximum, and then it dropped and dropped and dropped and dropped, right? It hit another little bump, but it sort of dropped over time. That doesn't look great. But that might be that we're focusing a little bit too much on a single time period. So that, that little up and down was from the right side of this graph here. But if we think about that the climb, the increase in interest, right, the development of further interest is very rarely, basically never, like that diagonal line that goes from, the starting point or the origin all the way up, and just as a straight line growing. That's not how interest works for anyone. Even Olympic athletes and professional musicians and those sorts of things are going to go through ups and downs where, if we're measuring interest here, they become more or less interested in something, and engage with it more or less over time, even if the overall trend is that it's increasing. Also, it's just important to note that, especially when people are starting out, very few people, I guess it's hard for me to say concretely that someone is born with an interest in something. Now, in our research, many of the scientists that we talked to would say that they could not remember, these are adult scientists, that they could not remember a time when they were not interested in, some type of science or STEM. But, the likelihood is somebody is not born with immediate intrinsic interest in quantum physics, right? That they developed that somewhere along the way. And when we ask them as adults, it's just that they can't really remember when that started. And even for those people, there's times where, again, if we measured it day to day, it probably goes up and down. So what I wanted to say is, to the left side of this graph, right, to the start of it, you can see that for the squiggly line, right, that I think is probably a more natural representation of someone developing interest. There's points where it goes below that red line. And that might mean that they actually don't like the topic. And I think that that's right. It's important for us to recognize that too. It's not always that everyone is interested in everything, and it's just how much. But there's times where somebody might not like a topic. Now, they probably stop engaging with it if that happens too much. But I did want to include that in here because at the start, there might be times where they have a bad experience. They might show at home that they've got some interest in art. They go in and they take an art class in school and they have a negative experience. That doesn't mean that's the end of it, right? But it might mean that educator or that experience or that mode of art that they were getting is not what they wanted. But they might come back and still engage in these things in other ways. And so that's just to say that that these things can change over time, and they can continue in this way. Okay. All right. So I know we're getting close to the end here. So just a few more ideas. So what I just said really, as far as I know, applies across really any or almost all interests that someone might develop, right? And I'm speaking about them in a very general sense, but most of that is from the research that I know on developing interest and some of the research we've done on STEM interest. But just to add a few slides in here at the end about specifically working with kids on developing STEM interest. I would say focus more on the actions and the habits of mind than on knowledge and recall. So oftentimes you can find maybe books available at the American Center or even online that are really about facts. 1,000 science facts or 1,000 engineering facts or something like that. That can be fine to look at and valuable, but really focus more on what it is that scientists do, what it is that STEM professionals do, and how they think about the world. That will be much more valuable and much more likely to engage them than this idea, this sort of duality of you either know all these facts about how the world works or you don't, because it's impossible for everyone to know those facts. And often students get the impression, because that's what school is often based on, that if I'm not good at that, if I don't do well on tests in science at school, then I must not be good at science, right? Whereas if they're very good with their hands and they can solve problems, they just might not be able to remember all 206 bones in the body, then then they think that they can't do it. And that's the wrong message that we're giving to them. It's important, just like in science, right? There's not one way that science is done, one way that engineering is done. If you look around you, right, there's multiple ways buildings are built, multiple ways that cars and trains and trucks are built. So there's many ways to accomplish something rather than a single way to do it. And I think, again, too often we focus on the right or wrong and not that there really is a diversity of ways that we can accomplish things. And STEM helps us to do that. And that's one of the most powerful things about it. Engaging them in a mix of activities. So just like I said before, think about breadth and depth. Don't make it always the same thing. So if they like looking at butterflies, I'd encourage you to go beyond butterflies, look at other insects or look at them in different ways if you can get your hands on a hand lens or a magnifying lens, do that, use your phone's camera, just observe it in your hand. Having them engage in a variety of mixture of activities will help. Focus on those that are age and skill level appropriate. So you would not put a 4-year-old in front of a computer and have them try to code, advanced program necessarily, but there's still things you can do that get them engaged in doing some things related to computers that are age level appropriate. Similarly, if you have a child who does like math, then and maybe they've developed some skills that are beyond typical for their age level, you don't have to just keep giving them math problems that are appropriate for their grade level. You can give them some more advanced ones and see if they're appropriate. You shouldn't jump too far, because then they might not find it interesting, not find that they can do those things. But try to dial in what's going to work well, and you always want to try to encourage growth for them. Definitely try to focus on hands-on activities like making, building, applying those ideas, working with their hands. That's definitely different than what happens in a lot of schools. And that can really engage them, because often they want to work with their hands. And you can do things that might look like art, but they're still very STEM and scientific in what they're doing with colors and lines and perspective and all those things. So I'd encourage focusing on the hands-on activities. You yourself shouldn't worry about not being an expert in everything. So no one person can be an expert in all of it. And so this is where it's really helpful and valuable to see that there's a community of people around the world that share information and ideas and work together to try to advance our human understanding of the world. And so have them engage with these other people. If you find somebody that's an engineer and they're talking, too complicated with the child, then definitely, find someone else to talk about engineering. Sometimes that happens, but definitely, try to engage them with other people who know about, different areas. That will help them, again, see that there's a wide range of people who do this and also get different perspectives. For you engaging in the STEM with your children, I would definitely say, and this is a teacher or a parent, play with it, right? Make it more about spending the time together and exploring ideas and trying to make sense of the world. Admit when you know something, when you don't know something. Make some observations. Hey, guess what I saw today? I saw a leaf blowing upwards in the air. How do you think that happened? Right? Doing those sorts of things, trying to fix something that's not working in your apartment. Make it more about that than there has to be a right or wrong, or again, that there's sort of a book we can go to and find all these right answers. That will be more engaging. And again, show how these ideas can be used to not just understand the world around us and our past, but also to create new things, to invent new things, and to innovate. There's plenty of problems we all have around us in our sort of microsphere and in a wider sphere. So get them to engage in thinking about how they might be able to solve that problem for themselves, for their family, for their friends, for their communities. If you remember one thing about this, please remember that it's a lot of times we hear this idea of somebody got pushed into an area, right? They got pushed into sports, they got pushed into engineering. In our experience, in our research, overwhelmingly, the stories that we hear that are positive are somebody saying, my parents, my teachers supported me along the way. They didn't push me or pull me in. And so just remember that as a key thing, please. I will take a look at the questions in the chat and please share. We have a few minutes left. If you can share any more questions you have. So one question that comes in is, can you tell more about the maker truck, or we call it the Uplands Maker Mobile? Where do you travel? What is the target audience and goal? What do you do there? What events, activities do you organize? Maybe teachers can organize something like this in their local schools. What I would say is start small, organize something in your classroom if you're a teacher, or in your community if you're outside of a school. So if you're a parent or just involved in a community, if you're an engineer, let's say, and you want to get kids involved in engineering, there are often community centers. Here we call them boys and girls clubs, but there's probably clubs like that in Russia, libraries, those sorts of things where people and primarily youth come together. And so I would say start with small activities. It might be just playing with some basic science ideas. And if you look up, if you search my name or email me, I'll share my email on the next slide. Then I can point you to some of these, but basically just engaging them in some of these activities, getting them to build birdhouses, getting them to work with their hands, getting them to sew and to stitch. Those are great. Often they can be done with recyclables or simple materials or cardboard. And starting there, and as interest develops and as people are getting engaged in that, then you can start thinking about doing it with a broader audience and with more, infusing more STEM and more engineering and concepts in there. How can you help, or how can parents help foster curiosity and problem-solving skills? I think the main thing that I would say there, and I know we're just at time here, is to help kids see that the problems that they're interested in often aren't as simple as adults want to make them. Not scaring them, to show them that sometimes these problems are really big and we have no idea what we're doing, but to say that's a really interesting question. What do you think about it? How do you think we might go about improving it? And trying to find some really small way that you can keep that conversation or keep moving forward with it. So if they see somebody who might be on the street and hungry, not trying to say, how can we solve world hunger? But trying to think about small little things that you can do to maybe assist that person or the next person you see, or to make the community more aware about things, to think about, the caloric value in food, but keep those questions coming, keep the curiosity, the wondering. And the best way you can do that is by modeling yourself. Like I said, I saw this thing today on my way, on my walk to work. I wonder what caused that, or what do you think that thing is? That's going to be the best way, I think, to help foster that curiosity. And many of the times they might not care or might not want to engage, but you might eventually find something that does hook them and get them engaged. Well, as I said, please feel free to reach out and contact me. Thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate the chance to connect with you all. Hopefully at some point I'll get to meet some of you, but please feel free to get in touch if you've got questions or are interested in some of the things that I said today, or if something comes up in the future, please do reach out.